Good afternoon.
I haven't heard anything from.
Good afternoon, Advocate.
Yeah, I want to know that I'm welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry for the few minutes that I have been late. Let me welcome the two of you. We will do the formalities. Advocate Nele is going to swear you in before you give us your stories and your testimonies. And then thereafter, Mr. Tom is going to take you through the paces based on what you have already presented to us. Advocate Ngale.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, Mr. Ali and Ms. Ahmad.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Ali, I'm just going to start with you, and I want to know whether you'll take an oath or an affirmation.
I'm going to take the oath.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali. Mr. Ashraf Ali, do you swear that the evidence you're about to give today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If that is so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali. You've now been sworn in as a participant in the SJN hearings.
Mr. Tom.
Sorry, I'll just swear in Ms. Rabia
Oh, yeah.
Ahmad.
Okay.
Ms. Ahmad, will you be taking an oath or an affirmation?
I'll be taking the oath.
No problem. Ms. Rabia Ahmad, do you swear that the evidence you're about to give today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If that is so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ahmad. You've now been sworn in as a participant in the hearings.
Yes, Mr. Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Advocate Mai. Good afternoon, Ms. Ahmad and Mr. Ali. Let me start with you. Both of you have deposed to affidavits, which are before us. And I will start with Ms. Rabia Ahmad. Your affidavit, Ms. Ahmad, you talk about issues that affect the Hanover, the Fish Right Hanover Park Cricket Club. You talk about, which is a club that is managed by black people. And you talk about the struggles that the club has had with the Western Province Cricket Union in terms of the facilities not reaching the Fish Right Hanover Park Cricket Club. And you talk about how that then affects the development of the game in the community. Now, I would want you then to take the chairperson through that and South Africa as at large. But before you do that, I think perhaps the best way to handle the testimony that both you and Mr. Ali are going to tender is to also just take Mr. Ali through his affidavit that he has deposed to, and what is it that he is going to be telling the chairperson about. Can we do it that way?
Sure.
Thank you.
Order.
Mr. Ali, you've been sworn in, and
Yes, sir.
In front of me, I have your affidavit, and you would be talking about 4 issues. It sort of has 4 chapters, your affidavit. You'll be talking about the access. Chapter 2, you are talking about opportunities in the game of cricket. Chapter 3, you are talking about structural manipulation to retain the status quo. In chapter 5, you make recommendations and the general aspects of the game. I hand over the floor to you, Ms. Ahmad. Take us through your affidavit.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to the person. And thank you for this opportunity to present to you issues affecting the Hanover Park Cricket Club. If I may then start by taking you through my affidavit. As you would have noted, I am a patron of Hanover Park Cricket Club, and I attend to all their legal matters on a pro bono basis, on the basis of being a patron. And this affidavit that I attested to is to illustrate my own experiences with the inadequacies and unfair practices which have been leveled against what is still a previously disadvantaged community and club, and what I've come across in my representation of the club with the various structures, in particularly the game of cricket.
Yes.
My involvement started on a professional level as a practitioner in October last year, when
Yes.
I was requested to address communication to the Western Province Cricket Association, setting out certain issues and concerns which the club had, such as, for instance, as listed at paragraph 6 of my affidavit, the decision-making processes, the operational and management issues. These are all at Western Province Cricket Association. The lack of transparency in projects being undertaken, the issues surrounding their own building development projects, then issues surrounding nominations of independent directors and non-independent directors, the manner in which persons are nominated for vacant positions without providing details as to how these nominations have come about and whether or not proper processes were followed. Clarity on when the adjourned AGM will take place. The AGM took place on 3rd of August 2020, and it was then adjourned. And then also there were certain funding cuts to club cricket at grassroots level. So those were the main issues which they were addressed with. It's not an exhaustive list. There are many more issues and concerns, but we did not want to belabor unnecessary points and wanted to stick to what was seen as the most crucial issues for the club. The club
Yes.
itself, Hanover Park, had attempted to address these issues previously with Western Province Cricket Association, but it came to nothing. Western Province Cricket Association has continuously ignored and failed to take cognizance of legitimate concerns which were raised by the club. And this was evident by responses received from Western Province Cricket Association. And for these purposes, to illustrate the responses received, I attached the annexures, as annexures, the various correspondences which were exchanged with Western Province Cricket Association.
Yeah. Can before you proceed, what these issues that you are raising with the Western Province cricket, what informed No. If these issues are not addressed, what is the effect of the failure to address these issues on the cricket club, which is Fish Ride Hanover Park Cricket Club?
Well, it directly impacts the club.
Yes.
No cricket can be played. There's issues with facilities, and that impacts the youth directly. I mean, we're dealing with an impoverished community, right, with crime and gangsterism. And if cricket can't happen, we can't get those kids off the street. They are being attracted to those other bad elements.
Rabia, I think I need to ask whether the quality of the sound has got anything to do with us here, or...
Yeah, no, I can hear you on my side, Mr. Chief.
You do hear me?
I do hear you, Mr. Chief.
Okay. Yeah, you know, the sound, quality of the sound from you isn't as clear as the quality of the sound from Ashraf, for instance. But let's see how far we go.
Okay, does it seem better now?
Yeah, well, you are audible now. Yeah.
Okay, I touched the earphones.
Yes. Yeah, sometimes if one is wearing the earphones, then for some reason, I don't know, because I'm not technically savvy. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, so going back to the question, it does impact the youth directly, and
Yes.
it can't happen as it should. So that would be my response to that question.
Yes. And that youth is predominantly, if I understand, is predominantly black.
That's correct, yes.
Continue.
It's not 100%.
Thank you.
Remember, it's a color community. So, yeah, you are correct in your assertion.
Thank you. You may continue.
Okay, thank you very much. Then, so those were concerns which were unfortunately not addressed. Then also a further concern to the club was the nomination process which were undertaken for the election of the president and vice president, and the absence of audited financials at the time. And the reason why these issues are so important is because these are the leadership of the association, and whatever decisions the leadership make filters directly down to the club. So that is why it is a concern if we are not following correct processes to choose our leadership, that impacts how things are done. It has a ripple effect all the way down to the club at grassroots level. And that is why these issues were of concern to the club. And that is why these issues, they became the specific issues addressed via my office on behalf of the club. And as you would see throughout my affidavit, we raised these issues with when we did not have any satisfactory response or any action being taken by Western Province Cricket Association. These issues were then taken up with the then interim board of Cricket South Africa. This was before the new board were appointed.
Yes.
And then same thing happened there. We took it to the Minister of Sports office. We were referred to SASCOC. Same happened there. And none of these issues were then addressed by either of these organizations. And then the club itself addressed the issues with the interim CEO of Western Province Cricket Association. And at clause paragraph 11 of my affidavit, I then, my office then formally addressed the issue based on the responses received from the interim CEO. I'm not sure if you want me to take you through the content of that letter. The letter essentially pointed out to the CEO the clauses that we sought to rely on for the argument that we had formulated for the reason that the proper processes were not followed for the appointment of the president and vice president. And what the club had sought from the first instance was that the association looks at the request and to follow the proper process. That is all that the club is for proper process to be followed. And that has to date been the issue that we've had.
So the issues that you raise or you discuss at paragraph 11 of your affidavit.
Yes.
You are saying that those issues are still present to this date. The Western Cape did not resolve those issues.
That's correct. It's still unresolved.
Yes.
And as I've set out at paragraph 12 of my affidavit, we received a response from Mr. Alban Wagner, an attorney acting on behalf of Western Province Cricket Association. And basically, his response was a repeat of what we had stated in our correspondence to them. And he advised that the matter was referred to the Western Province Cricket Association board, not specifically for these matters to be dealt with, but for action to be taken against the club.
Oh,
So
for action, disciplinary action to be taken against
the club. That's correct. Not
right.
For the issues to be dealt with.
Okay.
So it would seem then that taking action against a disadvantaged club took precedence over real issues of concern being raised, particularly as these very people who lead these structures are the ones who make important decisions for clubs, and particularly disadvantaged clubs, such as Hanover Park Cricket Club. Then we noted the disappointment to Mr. Wagner with which the matter was being dealt with, and we also a concern to us was that, and we pointed this out to Mr. Wagner, was the fact that he was acting as an attorney for Western Province Cricket Association when he himself was involved in the structure of Western Province. And in particular, his involvement with the Procto, the company. And also, he sits on the appeals board of the disciplinary committee. So these are the very people who's going to be making decisions, disciplinary decisions, but also at the same time acting as an attorney for the association. And that to us raised a red flag as being a conflict of interest, which Mr. Wagner, which he refuted. Those flags.
Yes.
That is the conflict.
What do you think is the reason for this attitude by Western Province? By Western Province cricket, you know, what do you think is the reason for this attitude towards?
Well, the impression that's created is that that the club is seen as disruptive in raising these issues. So that's my impression. Mr. Allie would be able to give you even more clarity on that, on that question, as he has at times also been in the firing line at meetings with the association. So me not having personally been at those meetings and been at the end of at the receiving end of the attitude, Mr. Allie would definitely be able to clarify that once he addresses you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
those are my questions.
Okay, then eventually where we found ourselves, as set out in by affidavit, is that we then approached the Cape Town Sports Council, and there was hope that they would be able to mediate the matters, the issues between the association and the club. Unfortunately, that came to naught as Western Province Cricket Association indicated that it would deal with the matter internally. But these issues were never dealt with internally to date. And instead, at the very same time, the club received a suspension letter from the association and ended up being suspended for a period of 60 days. That period has now elapsed, but that was the result, was a suspension letter. And following that, I then received instructions to lodge a formal complaint with the interim CEO as per the, if I recall correctly, it's clause 42 of the Constitution of Western Province Cricket Association, which I then did. And there were responses, and the response was that the club did not have locus standi to dispute certain issues, that the only issue they would be able to bring to arbitration would be the issue of the suspension. And that is where we find ourselves at this present time with the matter. So we're at the point where the club has to raise 10,000 rand, because that would be the cost to take the matter to arbitration, and is at the point of making that decision, whether or not to arbitrate the matter.
Okay, and how has that affected, that suspension, how has that affected the game, to the access to the game, to the poorest of the poor?
Well, because that Mr. Ali would also be able to answer, but my understanding is that no, or very little ticket has been happening. The club was effectively excluded from any activities arranged by Western Province. And as far as I understand, there were minimal activities happening during this period, but Mr. Ali can also answer that, as I'm not directly involved in the day-to-day running of the club. I'm just a patron and I represent the club in legal matters. So that Mr. Ali would be able to clarify for you. The reason for my affidavit as well, my submission, is to also just illustrate challenges which clubs, or which specifically a Hanover Park Cricket Club face in dealing with the structure that's there to support it, and it's not getting the necessary support that it should. And also to illustrate that when real issues arise, issues are not dealt with. And that is the point of my submission in my own experience with this matter. Then to end off, it then becomes apparent that what is the purpose of not having proper nominations process? Is it to manipulate the process itself? Is it to ensure that certain individuals are placed in positions of power? And the only thing which the club has gotten out of this whole process that we followed since October last year was the suspension, but no real dealing with the issues that it has. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ahmad.
Once again, I find myself having to emphasize the purpose of this project, social justice and nation building project. Its purpose and my function in relation thereto is intended to gather evidence which will show in the end that racial and gender discrimination in whatever form it was applicable and whatever level in the entire universe of cricket as a sporting code was discriminatory in the manner in which it affected particular persons who come to testify before me and who, in the language of the terms of reference, are victims. And those victims were dealt with to their detriment by both the system and the individuals who were the levers of power in the system. And their account before me must be of a nature that shows that there was this discrimination which was unfair and therefore impacted in one way or another, in an unfair way, on cricketing careers of those who felt that they are victimized by the system. That, in a broad sense, is the mandate that I have. And I would like to be assured that this comes out in the testimonies that I get. It would seem to me that there might be a temptation to bring before this forum matters with which people have been aggrieved with. And it may well be, and in relation to which I cannot or I do not find that certain things happened because there was racial or gender discrimination. We have got a period of 30 years which we have to look at from 1991 to 2021. And in that 30-year period, we are inquiring through testimonies on the impact of discrimination based on race and or gender. And I want to emphasize this because I want us to focus on evidence that will show that it is reasonable to conclude that certain things affected certain people because of their race, because of their gender, or both. So I don't know whether in your affidavit and its annexures you address the issue in that way. And if you do, given the strictures of time that we have, I would love you to address those aspects so that the mandate of the office of the Transformation Ombudsman is assisted by that testimony.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, if I may, firstly, my sincere condolences for the loss of your colleague. And for the sake of clarity, I just want to share that both Rabia and myself, our submissions is on behalf of the club. And I did not want to interject because I wanted to respect the process. I think in hindsight, the way we thought it through, and I think I mentioned it to Advocate Dumisa that I would start off first. But anyway, be that as it may, I understand where Suchi is coming from. I think the aspect Rabia has shared is a culmination of a whole set of things. And if you can be patient with us and allow me to do my submission, maybe then it becomes clearer how discrimination, how the structural exclusion, structural racism that is within the game, not only that we've seen here in the province, but now we've seen countrywide, that will come out hopefully when I present. So I trust you will allow us to do it in that way.
No problem at all. It's just that I also have got a mandate in
Fully
which
understood.
I need to conduct these hearings. And I can tell you there are people out there who are waiting to criticize this process as having been an abuse of its own process insofar as it misdirected itself and started to deal with local grievances which could easily have been dealt with by the structures that they are, without those testimonies showing what the office of the Transformation Ombudsman is mandated to inquire into. This is an office that looks at transformation issues, and it is an office that is looking at how transformation as a concept or in its implementation was or was not impacted by race or by gender. I want to emphasize that that is the focus of these hearings. These hearings are not designed to substitute processes and procedures that are existent in the provinces, in the clubs, such as the maybe such processes. However, if in the utilization of facilities, of opportunities, or of selection methods, all of those, it becomes clear, as I think in some of the testimonies that we have heard, there were indications that this was so. If it is clear that people became victims in the clubs or in the structures in which they found themselves, and it is manifest that the race and or gender were at the basis of what those people went through, then this is the place to come to. What I don't want to end up listening to and dealing with is where people simply see this platform as one to which they must bring grievances that they have with the way in which things are done, where they are coming from, without, through that evidence, showing me that whatever it is that they are victims of, it is because it has got a racial element, it has got a gender element. It's not just a question which could easily be dealt with by some other structures within the cricketing world. So I cannot overemphasize that. And I found that today there is a misconception as to what this platform was created to achieve. But I am here to listen. If you feel that you are the one who must make the presentation to the office of the Transformation Ombudsman, and you will cover those aspects that Ms. Rabia Ahmad should have covered in a way in which I've described the purpose of these hearings, then you are free to do so. I am not going to stop listening to you, but I just want to make sure that we all understand each other. What is the purpose of these hearings? And if we understand what the purpose of the hearings are, then you can take over and give us your testimony, bearing in mind that at the end of the day, I want to achieve those objectives. Those are the objectives that are in my terms of reference, and I dare not deviate outside the terms of reference. Otherwise, the entire process might be a subject of review.
Mr. Chair, I fully understand and respect and share your brief. So if you allow me, maybe through my submission, you will see that we bring around the discrimination, whether it's racist. Sometimes we can even, there's something new to this whole situation, class. If you're not a certain class, you get excluded. And we're going to share with you where there's gender discrimination. So if you allow me, I wasn't given the opportunity to introduce myself properly. So Yusuf Ashraf Ali, most people call me Ashraf Ali. I'm known as Ashraf Ali in cricket circles.
Okay, let's do it this way, Mr. Ali. Do I take it now that you are presenting also on the basis of your affidavit or statement, which I have before me? You will speak to it. And
I will speak to it, but I might be, I'm someone that speaks from the heart.
Which is exactly what I want. I want people to speak from the heart. And and the affidavits are just guidelines.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you allow me, I was born 9th of 1965 in District 6. I was 8 years old when we were chucked out of District 6. And we were placed on the Cape Flats. I'm not political, so I know our history and I know our divided past, but I don't behold any grudges. I will never forget our past. I do have in me forgiveness, but up to a point where there has to be compromises when that forgiveness takes place. So I am a very passionate South African. I love sports. And I became involved in cricket 12 years ago. So for 43 years, I simply just loved watching sport. I never got into the politics of what happened in the background. I just wanted to see our team succeed. And on many occasions we succeeded, and on many occasions we failed. But let's talk specifically cricket. I got involved in the game, as I said, 12 years ago. I was working on a project for St. Augustine's Cricket Club. Beresford Williams was the chairperson of the club. This is the same club of Basil de Oliveira, Paul Adams. And Beresford saw something in me. He felt I'm an administrator. I've got the qualities of an administrator. And at the time, he was appointed the president of Western Province Cricket Association, and he had to step down as secretary of the club. But by that time, he engineered that I become the secretary of St. Augustine's Cricket Club. So I served under two chairpersons at the club. But at the same time, while serving at St. Augustine's, I brought the biggest sponsorship deal, naming rights sponsorship deal to the club in their over 100-year history. And because being part of the management committee, I then got exposed to attending council meetings. And this is basically, so I spent 6 years at St. Augustine's, and I would say I cut my teeth there as an administrator. And there I saw a good and bad, not necessarily just at Saints, but when I say good and bad, you know, at council meetings, you could see the environment. And maybe others will argue, but this is my experience, toxic environment. And I was also a beneficiary of being afforded to sit and watch Test cricket in the President's Suite for Test matches, whether it's 5-day, 1 day. And that is where lots of debates and discussions goes around with regards to cricket and the running of the game and things like that. Anyway, to cut a long story short, Mr. Chair, after 6 years, there wasn't something, I wasn't happy with what was going on. And there was an incident. I stay in Athlone, and I'm not from Hanover Park, but I'm 5 minutes away from Hanover Park. Now, as Arabia said, or Ms. Ahmed said, Hanover Park is always in the papers for the wrong reasons. Yet there's many amazing things that happen in that area. But there was an incident that happened, and I told my wife, look, I'm instead of driving 20 minutes to Westlake, to Deep River, where Saints were based, I'm going to put my hand up and try and see if I can help that community. And I approached the club. Long story short, I asked them, I wanted to join the club, but I want to lead the club. I want to be the chairperson. So that was quite a bit of a forceful maneuver. But I explained to them I had no ill intent. I'm a practicing Muslim. Everything we do, we are supposed to do with true intentions. And the leadership, they accepted. And within the first few weeks, Mr. Chair, we had a workshop where we took most of our members outside of the area, and we had, by that time, also appointed Professor Karen Pretorius, who is the director of UWC, who made UWC's facilities available for us. And there we had a workshop, and we set goals and we dreamt. And there was 3 or 4 things that we wanted to do. wanted to be the best club in the country. We wanted to start producing pro-tier players, male or females. And we wanted to create well-rounded youth that can be a meaningful part of society. And we wanted to become self-sustainable. And naturally, through that process, we started engaging with Western Province. I started attending council meetings as not only the chairperson of the club, but as a delegate of these council meetings. And in this process, while we were now developing ourselves, we registered as a non-profit. And the minute we registered as a non-profit, we needed to have 3 office bearers, and then we elected 3 office bearers. Myself, as chairperson, Riyad Hamildin. At the time, there was another person, he's not with the club anymore, but our current office bearers is Riyad Hamildin, who's my vice chair, and Fatima Domingo, who's our senior administrator. So now we're engaging with Western Province. And at the time when making inquiries now on the club and at where the club is, we found ourselves engaging with the leadership of Western Province, explaining to them why we want to, become this, because of the area where we're coming from. And so one of the first things that we looked at, Mr. Chair, was the funding mechanisms that was given to us. I'm just wanting to go there quickly. So the funding that the club started receiving.
It's a page 3.
Yeah. I've got mine back to back, sorry. Okay, so page 3, we started looking at the funding that we received. But before we get there, sorry, I know I'm on page 3 now. So
yes.
So just in terms of my submission, there's the 4 aspects. Access. If you look at facilities, not even just Western Cape, countrywide, facilities, and it's come out over this last few weeks, it has been presented here. We simply don't have proper access to facilities. And this impacts, as Ms. Rabia explained, it impacts us greatly. When we do have access to this facility, it is a fight with another sports code. Now, I'm not going to get into the politics of it. What I want to share around the lack of facilities, it is not properly maintained. Now, we're going to get into who's directive, because Western Province and Cricket South Africa is going to tell you it is not their directive to provide facilities. They're there to assist and guide. Although over this last few weeks, we've seen funding being given to clubs countrywide for facilities, which doesn't necessarily happen here in the Western Cape. I can tell you there's going to be, further on we'll make reference to it. But the matter for us with the facilities, if a club wants to operate optimally, we need stakeholders to understand their role. So, for example, CSA Western Province, the city of Cape Town, which is our local municipality, the other sports code, ourselves, and again, we don't know how it works in other provinces. But in Cape Town, we have, the city has implemented what we call the FMCs, Municipal Facilities Management Committees. Now, that was structured so that there could be some form of structure. And I can tell you, our experience is that there are many that are struggling because there's either one powerful sport code that dominates, or whoever, or there's always challenges. So it's never worked. There might be a few successes, but that's far and few. It's not a lot. Certainly in our case, we have that challenge. We also have to work with the local ward councillor, and if you're not part of their mandate, you have struggles, and that is our situation. But I'm not here to debate that now. What our club debates with Western Province is the lack of real gumption to say to the city, no, enough is enough. Our sport, our youth, our boys and girls, they need facilities. It is a fundamental right. But we go around in circles. For 2 years, Mr. Chair, our senior side could not play cricket at home. For 2 years. Now, if we want to compete and gain promotion, we're already at a disadvantage. So for 2 years, we didn't play it at home. Then, through many engagements, we had issues with contractors. And that is not only us, other clubs as well. Not that we're not saying we're unique. I was told, I stood up in council meetings and I was told I must stop standing up and speaking on behalf of clubs. I must speak for myself or for my club. So we do that at council meetings, and privately we engage with Western Province. So we always in their face. We've got tons of email correspondence because we want to change our dynamic in our area. So we then have to even go and find alternative. Then we find alternative venues, and that becomes an issue, even though that there was no cricket. Although through a process, even if there's misunderstandings, we're a club, we debate robustly but fairly. And even that issue was an issue, but between the two clubs, we sorted it out, and eventually we play home, almost we play home, but it's away. We play away, but that's our home ground. So anyway, the facilities is one aspect. And if you look at, in my submission, we made a reference to two black players, Themba Bavuma and Pelekwayo, that they had to move. We all know Themba Bavuma, Mr. Bavuma came from Langa Cricket Club, but he needed to move away to further his career. The same with Pelekwayo. So that is the danger that we find ourselves every time we invest time in our youth. The minute they are going to be noticed, they are then going to be taken away. And there's no recourse for us that put in the time and effort into these youth, and they're just taken away. And when you get to it, it's more the Glenwoods, where Pelekwayo came from, and St. David's, where Bavuma came from, that will get the credit. But the initial investment was at the clubs. So this is one of the things that we're saying, facilities is so key. But it is the way Western Province and Cricket by extension, Cricket South Africa by extension, is handling. And I'm saying CSA is a powerful brand. Yes, we have seen what has happened over the last few years. They say the shenanigans at CSA. But technically, we all have our views and our opinions. There's shenanigans at provincial level. There's shenanigans at club level. We've seen that come out in the last few weeks. Now, I'm not going to get into that. But the point I'm trying to make is facilities is appalling. The outfield is sandy. It's full of thorns. And you compare our facility to others. Now, in Cape Town, historically, legacy, there are certain clubs that have 99-year leases. They have no issues. Some of them don't have what we have as challenges. They don't have a different sports code to deal with. So besides having to deal with a different sports code, we as management, we must deal with the social ills. We must deal with there's 10 other things we must deal with as a chairperson or as a management committee. And it sets you back, it weighs you down, but you continue. You have to fight the cause to be able to change your circumstances. Mr. Chair, for 4 years, we had to, for practice, we basically practice every day of the week. But senior practice, I'm going to stick for senior practice now. Tuesdays and Thursdays. Every Tuesday, we must put up nets, take off nets. But the clubhouse is over there, 400 meters away or 500 meters away. You must put it up. Takes 30 minutes to put up. You must take it down. Takes 30 minutes to put it down. Take it down. That's hour of your training session gone. The condition of the nets is pathetic. We fight with the city. It took us years to get decent nets. It came to a stage where the management of Western Province said, okay, look, we're going to set aside X amount of money for you. And I'll quote the amount, 30,000. And you put up the nets yourself. We go to the city. We tell the city, look, we've got budget now for labor. We can at least start employing some of our people as well even. We get the city to give us the material. The material we get, it's not the quality that we want. What can we do? We're desperate. We want nets up. As things stand now, nets is up. But it's not what it should be. It's not when you go to any other facility. Why must we always be prepared for second best? And it's three nets. You get to other clubs, they have 8, they have 12. They have turf nets. Ours are synthetic. How do we develop? How do we compete on a Saturday with the type of practices and the type of facilities we have? Anyway, we play in the lower division. So our aspirations is to gain promotion. Because as we know, most players is picked in from the Premier League and maybe the first division. Hardly any players that in the lower leagues. So we're playing 1D, we're about 5 seasons away of playing in the Premier League. Yep. We've gained promotion once in this last 6 years that I've been with the club.
Yes.
And the point I'm trying to make here is that if this is just, and maybe if I can just park it there and say, this is what we hope CSA and Western Province understand, that matter needs to be tightened. We need to get once and for all this matter of the facility sorted out. Now I know AfriForum was on yesterday and they made some suggestions, and I know some people might criticize them. I haven't studied these 6 pointers. I think there's 1 point missing. They should have 0.7, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek. Maybe they must have a charity fund as well, so that we can get all the clubs to have decent facilities. But let's just park that for now in terms of the facility. Let's go to grant payments.
Yes, I was about to say that. Take us through that.
I made some. So in 2015, the club received 1,700, and we had a meeting, and I said to Clinton Dupree, I said to him, Clinton, 1,700, but you're taking off 850, which is an historical loan. So that's before my time. So a loan was taken off. I don't know, the province made a loan to the club at that time. But 1,700, which means 850 for the season.
Yes.
Anyway, we negotiated to scrap that loan. It was agreed. In 2016, our grant increased to 2,115. In 2017, to 3,200. Now, I want to say these grants that I'm quoting, the amounts that I'm quoting, and the future amounts that we received in 2018 and 2019, all these grants, wait for it, is paid in arrears. So the 2015 monies that we received in 2015 was actually 2014's money. But anyway, you know what I mean in terms of arrears. So you only get your monies the following year. In 2017, we again had a meeting with Western Province leadership, and we said to them, look, our coaches, we've got members, they're sitting at home, they idle, they're desperate, they need work. Some of them have got level 1 coaching. Can't we start a school program? In Hanover Park alone, Mr. Chair, there's 11 to 12 schools in Hanover Park alone and surrounding areas. Hanover Park, that is where the kids go to, the schools in that area, 12 schools, primary schools and senior schools. And we said to them, fund our coaching program. They agreed. But I said to them, sorry?
Who are they? Who are you asking?
Western Province Management.
Okay.
Western Province Management agreed that they will support our cricket program.
Yeah.
But the only reason I asked that, the request we actually asked was, and it's part of one of our annexures, is the terms of reference for a hub.
Yes.
In business, in life, I was brought up, you aim high. I actually asked them to give us hub status. Because if you read the terms of reference of the hub, then we qualify blanketly for being a hub. We qualify. We have 4 schools, more than 4 schools. We have a level 2 coach. Yes, the facility might not be 100%, but the coaching happens at the schools as well. So the point I'm trying to make is they decided, look, let us support your school program, and we give it 2 years, and then you apply for hub status. So we do that. And in September 2017, they start disbursing 4,200 monthly towards our school program. And in that school program, every week we coach up to 900 kids per week on a rotation basis. And I can tell you, Mr. Chair, one of the schools, not that it's a big issue, but I want to demonstrate to us it doesn't matter about the race, the color. One of the schools has 95% African black. 95%. But we don't treat them any different to any of the other kids in Hanover Park. We love them to bits because it's about that youth. And we coach and we manage and you know what, Mr. Chair, we are kind of we're a blessing for the school. They are so happy because when you teach on the Cape Flats and in areas such as Hanover Park, Manenberg, Bonteheuwel, Elsie's River, it is not easy for those educators, the principals. I admire our principals in Hanover Park and our educators for what they are doing to our youth under difficult circumstances. So we are value add. We don't ask them any additional funding because we render a service. And over and above that, we help the school with arranging feeding. We ourselves, we feed our youth when we ever have to play official matches on a Saturday morning. So we go beyond the call of duty. And I'm not saying this to boast, Mr. Chair. And I'm not saying that we are unique. Whatever we're doing, we feel other clubs should be doing as well. Hence, when I stand up in council meetings, I stand up because I know there are clubs that I use the word clubs, certain clubs don't have capacity. And I say that not with disrespect, Mr. Chair. And I don't want to digress. I'll come to that aspect. Let me just finish this grants. Eventually, it comes to 2019. We have some issues where clubs that are hubs are taking some of our youth because they have a mandate to target certain areas. Again, there was an issue with the club. We met at the time. Dr. Richard Noor was the chairperson. He was, if I'm not mistaken, he was a board member still at the time. We had a meeting and we solved it. The president of, and I'm going to mention the club, Victoria Cricket Club. And Mr. Weingard, who's the president, to his credit, he apologized and said it will never happen again. And Mr. Chair, we resolved the issue. We can do that. We can have differences, but it's the way we sort out this. And we proved that. We went away up until today. Dr. Richard Noor and myself, we're very good friends. I call him a brother. I think he's a wonderful administrator. He's lost to the game. Hopefully he can resurface, but that's for another day. The point I'm trying to make is that we applied for hub status. We gave a fully funded proposal, a fully detailed proposal of why we need to be hub. And we gave stats of numbers, the masses we are, everything that the hub talks about, we do. And without arrogance, that we do even more than current hubs do. So we apply. That was in 2019. Sorry, in 2019, we also had a site visit. My memory serves me correct. I'll give you the date now. Sorry, it was November 2019. Mr. Edward Koza, and I failed to remember one of the other CSA, I think there was two, Charles Clarke, Lindsay O'Malley, they came to do a site visit. Took them through it, the facility. The one thing about that facility, despite it looking, it has a lot of potential. Anyway, it probably half an hour. they spend there. In 2020, myself and my fellow office bearers Fatima and Riyadh, we met with Clinton and his team, and they gave us feedback on the hub status. And they said that our hub status has been rejected. That was in December 2020. So it took them a full year to make that assessment that we are not fit for hub status. And he proceeded to tell me, or tell us, that Gugulethu received hub status. I personally, Mr. Chair, I'm happy for Gugulethu. It's an African club. I think they deserve it. I think more clubs from the townships and from the Cape Flats must get hub status. If you look at the dynamic, currently there are clubs with hub status in middle income areas, which doesn't talk to the policy. So there's a disadvantage. There we are. Why are we treated differently to others? Anyway,
no, Mr. Ali.
Yeah.
Mr. Ali, I see you mentioned in the affidavit,
Yes.
just after discussing the funding or the grant payments that you were receiving from Western Cape, from Western Province Cricket Association, there is a conclusion there that you draw just before you discuss the hubs. You say, how do you bring about equality, fairness and justice when payments are made out to clubs based on their league status or legacy status? I'm not sure whether in your presentation up to now you've covered that.
Okay.
Can
sorry.
you, if you have not, I would like you to just expand.
No, thank you for bringing that to my attention. So just to complete, in 2019 we received a grant of 5618, and in 2019, in December 2020, we received a grant of 5618 again, and that was the last of our grants. Remember, I'm saying that these grants are paid in arrears. And up to that stage, our coaching program funding had increased to 10,800. Now, there might be clubs listening to this and saying, wow, you're getting more than what we're getting. Now, remember the statement I made. Don't stand up and talk for other clubs. Stand up for your own club. We did that. Offline, we engaged. It is not for us to tell Western Province, but look after the other clubs, although that's what we want. But I just want to bring that to. So my point after listening to the last 2 weeks, how do I know the 5681 is a fair amount that we are getting? Because there's no transparency at Western Province in how these monies are being paid out. The only transparency I know about, it is based on your league status. It's based. And some of these clubs they come from a legacy of advantage. So that in itself, how do you transform? How do you level? And the top level thinking at our club is leveling of playing fields. That's in our top mind, because if you level the playing fields, we want to partner off field with all clubs, but we want to compete on the field with you. But if we are always going to be disadvantaged with this type of thing, then there is never going to be a situation where we are transformed to current situations where we can compete to. And in my submission, we'll raise other things that will tell you why we'll always be then at a disadvantage. So sorry if I jumped to the hub, but I think I covered the hub. I think I mentioned, so I hope that answers your question in terms of why I say, where's the equality in that? And in that statement, it will still further come out. Where's the equality? All right?
Mr. Ali?
So let's go to page...
Mr. Ali?
Yes, dear.
Have you ever requested from the Western Province a breakdown of the allocation of the grant funding?
We requested many years. There's always suitcasey answers. There's always a way of communicating certain matters to clubs. And I'm going to get into that. But we did ask. And those type of information, you're not readily going to see. They might even tell you, no, for them it's confidential. To me, it's not confidential.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali. And then just lastly, did you already explain why the funding was stopped for this year? Why funding was stopped this year?
So our funding for our cricket program, when COVID hit in March, I think we received funding up until April 2020. We were told that all funding will be stopped. That include hubs. I don't know how true that is. But our funding definitely was stopped right up until now, even though we have a minute of which we feel was a second prize because we didn't get hub status. And then remember, I'm saying that we were rejected hub status, and we asked, give us written reasons why we were unsuccessful. One, to then go and see where must we go and rectify. Up until today, we have not received written correspondence from either Western Province or Cricket South Africa why we have not received hub status. Our funding was cut. And I can't explain that. I really can't explain. And it's my understanding hubs are being paid again, but we are still in the doldrums. We have members, coaches that was coaching, that built through this program, built their families up again. There was one coach, I don't think you'll mind me saying this, he was on the verge of eviction. But through this cricket program, he could change his life again with his family. His whole family is part of the club. In fact, he's our longest serving member at the club. And just like that, I know COVID has affected everybody. But just like that, funding gets taken away. I'm saying if funding was taken away, funding wasn't taken away from everybody. Why us? There has to be reasons. And it is sad that it happened in that manner. So if I may continue, I've mentioned about the hub. I can't speak enough. There's one thing that I want to show is this particular cricket stand.
Before we go there, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
On page 3, you do mention that you would like to make a comment on the Kailita hub. And then you say
Yes.
regarding Kirsten's involvement there. And you
Yes,
will know
Mr. Chair,
that it was portrayed. I kept on asking whoever was coming after Max Jordan had shown this hub, and we got to know that it was a white elephant, Then I said, no, this then is ammunition to people who will say, what's the point? Yeah? You know, what's the point? You know, Mr. Ashraf Ali can come here and complain and what. We have a club in Khayelitsha, and it's now a white elephant, you know.
Mr. Chair, yes,
I was given answers
I
by
was
those.
laughing. I must admit, I haven't been well over the last 2 weeks. So I've been under strict lockdown. And I've been following basically every day, live or maybe recorded. And I was always intrigued when you raised this Khayelitsha. You've raised it a number of times.
Yes, I did.
Hence the fact I want to add my 2 bit to it, or 2 cents to it. When Max, Mr. Yudan, did that presentation, I received a message to say, but what he's showing there is actually the magistrate's court.
You're not
So
serious.
I laughed. But this is not to put Mr. Yudan at it. The point I want to raise around that, I know that Gary Kirsten, and again, I'm not mentioning Gary to put him in a bad light. I'm mentioning this because we don't understand what happened. My understanding is that Gary Kirsten, through his foundation, is now in partnership with Khayelitsha. So when Mr. Yudan talks about a hub, is Gary Kirsten being funded via CSA through his foundation to oversee that hub? That's the question I'm asking. And so that is, now I see Gary Kirsten. Now, many years ago, Gary Kirsten was at Langa Cricket Club. Now, again, later on, I'll speak about Langa and Guguletu as 2 African clubs. Not that I'm speaking ill, but I want to demonstrate certain things. And I don't know if he's still involved with Langa, but Langa was the talk of the town many years ago. And Mr. Chair, we can debate the issue ad nausea. I have no issue if that was when teams would come, go to Langa overseas, go to Langa, go to certain areas. No issues with those things because we needed those clubs, just like clubs on the Cape Flats, to get the exposure. He's now at Khayelitsha. So there needs clarity. Mr. Chair needs to get the clarity. I really, so that's the comment I wanted to make.
Yes.
Is it because Gary Kirsten is there that they're getting hub monies as well and he's getting additional funding? Gary Kirsten is a brand name. You know, Gary Kirsten go knocks on a door at a corporate SA. Who are they going to listen to? Ashraf Ali or Gary Kirsten? They're going to listen to Gary Kirsten, and I respect him. Wonderful cricketer. I admired him as a opening batsman. In fact, let me tell you this: his brother Peter Kirsten was my idol. Yes, I know that will be seen as controversial, but like I said, I was involved. I didn't understand the politics. I just love cricket and I just support. But once you get to sensitize and you get to understand, not that you look at differently, but you get to appreciate where certain things come, where certain players come. I know certain players are even being ridiculed because why now? Mr. Chair, I know there's 2 schools of arguments. Why didn't they talk? Oh, it's difficult. So, I'm a fencer on that. I really empathize and sympathize with all those players that has experienced that. And we need to stop that. We need to stop that. And facilities and programs like the hub is going to help us stop that processes or incidences of happening. So, Mr. Chair, I hope that answers you. I'm giving you clarity that Gary Kirsten is involved in. So maybe not a white elephant, as you are saying it is, maybe it is active. I haven't been to Khayelitsha recently to confirm that.
Yes. Mr. Ali,
Yeah. Yes.
and I don't intend to rush you or cause you to jump, any chapters of your presentation. Now that we've read your presentation, and obviously we want you to take us through every aspect, every paragraph of it. I would want you to, perhaps before you deal with the Newlands cricket ground, which is the next chapter after the hubs.
Yeah.
Before you deal with that, I want to explore with you whether you are comfortable in taking us through the opportunities, the next chapter in your affidavit, which is...
Do you mind referencing my page so that I can
It
get
starts
it
at page 5.
Page 5.
Yes, the opportunities, and you have a number of topics under that chapter, and I think what sparked my interest is the concept of elitism that you say exists in the schooling system, and your views around classism as well as your views around your take on quota players. Thank
You. If I can start off by, youth cricket is the backbone of the sport, grassroots cricket. I mean, the best, if I can just mention this, the best we have thus far, where there's real camaraderie amongst clubs, is mini cricket festivals. Mini cricket festivals where clubs at the start of the season gets allocated to host 1 or 2 festivals. And the reason for me saying that that's the best feeling you have on a Saturday morning is when you can enter 4 or 5 teams per club and you host festivals at your place or at your opposition's place. But the main components in that exercise is the youth from 5 to up to 10, 9 years old, batting for the first time. But it's the parents and the grandparents and the aunts and uncles that are there. And you form this brilliant camaraderie. And over time, we supported one another as clubs. Someone started a tuck shop, and then as the week leading up to the to the Saturday festival, people would advertise that they're going to sell this and that, and clubs from different areas, from your wealthy leafy suburbs, from fellow Cape Flats, would come to these festivals and support one another. And they would praise each other for hosting, and we praised one another. So that for me that's the beauty. But once it gets beyond that, we don't have a fully structured under 11, under 13, boys and girls, under 15, even under 19, cricket structure where we can say every weekend our youth is featured. It is, you have a few fixtures, clubs withdraw, no consequences. Clubs say, no, it's exam time, they don't have players, no consequences. So there's no structure. So our youth They'll play a game here and there. And when I say here and there, if it's not for the youth coordinators and maybe some of the chairpersons that want to see the youth just playing, then we'll organize friendlies. So most of the games that we play are friendlies. There's no incentive. So when I say that's where we are disadvantaged, because our schools on the Cape Flats and in the townships, we don't have structured cricket in the week as with other schools.
Yes.
There are tournaments, there are leagues, they play week in and week out, even though we attempted to join some of that. You must remember, we are a community-based club. We don't necessarily have all the resources to do midweek because we are volunteers in the club. So we can't take time off to go and do midweek games. It's very difficult. We tried on occasions. It's not always manageable. So there's that disadvantage. Recently, and as a club, I don't know who signed this off. There's a tournament called the CPL. The CPL is apparently 8 owners. I don't know. I haven't gone into the understanding who's actually. But to our understanding, it was endorsed by Western Province. Whether it was endorsed by Cricket South Africa as well, I'm not sure. But there's 8 clubs, apparently 8 owners that bought, had to put X amount of money in. I don't know. A figure of 75,000 was mooted. And so they'll have under 11s, under 13s, up to under 15s. I don't know if there's under 19s. I don't know how many leagues. And I don't know if it's only for boys, if there's a girls team as well. But this is, let's talk boys. Apparently each club will kick out a boy, but you have to pay 2,500. Mr. Chair, immediately, that requirement immediately excludes most of the clubs on the towns, in the townships, on the Cape Flats. We excluded. In fact, 3 weeks ago, we received a call from one of our coaches. Can't one of our boys play for a club? Because one of our ex-players is a coach there, and maybe they can discount his amount. And I spoke to the management, and we felt, in principle, it is wrong. One boy, what about the rest of the boys? And if they discount, where is he going to get the other 1,500 or whatever the amount is? Or should we as a club raise that for him? It's not that we wanted to deny him. We felt on principle. It wasn't at a council meeting where this particular, they must prove to us that was signed off in a council meeting, this particular tournament. We are told it's a private tournament. There's rumors going on, and I don't want to respond on the rumors, but I'm going to mention it because maybe this office will find out if there's any validity in the rumors that Western Province is supporting that particular tournament with funding. But again, that is a form of elitism. It's a certain class that can only take, with all due respect, that can only take part in those tournaments. We can't. We don't have the resources. We don't have the capital. And I think it's a tournament, in hindsight, it should be reconsidered, because why don't we then have structured tournaments throughout the system? Why don't we? Even last year with COVID, it was engineered and maneuvered. We couldn't play. We were allowed to play friendlies. In our case, as senior cricket, Everybody, there was 4 playing and against playing. Eventually, at one stage, I think around about November, we were allowed to play. We wrote to Western Province. We could only play via following strict protocols. We wrote to Western Province a proposal to say, look, our headline sponsor is prepared to, sponsor umpires. We're going to have a friendly tournament. We termed it a friendly tournament. It was in honor of his dad that passed away. And it was just banter. It's friendlies. They rejected it. No, we can't. It's a tournament. I said, why not? You said friendlies are allowed. No, because there's a reward at the end of it. Anyway, this didn't make sense. We abided. We played friendlies. We had to stop again. We haven't played since. So, in terms of how the game is administered,
Yes.
I can't speak for other provinces, but here in the Western Cape, it just seems we will never get to the stage where we will be able to compete. And let me say the final point on this matter. We get every year, we get a letter or a message or an email to say, select 4 of your best players. Under 13, under 15, under 19, boys and girls. You select 4. So we must biasly select 4 for VP trials. So naturally, as a club, you bias, you're going to take 4. But we also made a principled decision. Look, it's senseless sending a boy to a trial if you know he's not yet ready. So in some cases, we don't send the full quota. We'll send 3 because we want the 3 to be able to reach something at the trials. So recently, so that's happened over the years. Recently, when lockdown, what happens, Mr. Chair? We send some of our coaches with. We come to the trials, and it's run over a few weeks, and we'll see and we'll observe. Sometimes I'm there, sometimes I'm not, but they report back, and we trust our management with the reports that come back, because some of them are senior officials within our club, and they'll complain to say that the selectors or the coaches, whoever they are, the boys will be in the nets, bowling, batting, and then they chit-chatting, laughing, going on, showing no interest. They're not supposed to coach. They must observe. When we ask our boys after a few trials, but because we monitor and videos get sent, how come your name was given in as an all-rounder? What are you? No, I'm a batting all-rounder, but they say I'm a bowler. So in that net, he's a batsman. In fact, two of our boys, plays in our first team as batters. But when they go to trial, this is in the under 16 age group. When they go to trials, they are told they are bowlers. So I don't know what formula they use to identify. As the weeks goes on, and the time and effort we have to get our boys to them, sometimes they split venues. So we don't have all the resources. We have to send one. At times, I don't have a bakkie, I have a car.
Mr.
I have
Ali.
4 boys in the back of my car. My boot is full.
Mr. Ali.
But we go to these trials. You can just bear with me. We
Mr.
go
Ali,
to
do you-
these trials. And after 4 weeks, the school boys comes to the trials. But not 4, 10, 15 comes to the trials. And over the last few years, when the final selection is, most of them comes from the schools. None of our youth is selected. We haven't. We've been selected, youth selected for the trials, but they never kicked on. In fact, there's just one boy many years ago, but that was an under 11, and it was circuit cricket. It wasn't anything, VP representing and playing against another province or anything like that. So that is that aspect. Sorry, you want
Mr. Allie?
Yes.
We have far exceeded the time that we had earmarked for both you and Madam Ahmad. If you were to be given 5 to 10 minutes to make your best points, make sure that we got your best points which you feel we need to take home with. You have the next 10 minutes to do it in.
Mr. Chair, I have noticed you're a very generous person. I admire you greatly. Can I get 20 minutes, Mr. Chair?
No. 15 at the very, but yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Let me put it this way. You have got up to 4 o'clock.
The member stand, I'm going to go quickly through this. The member stand. I don't want to debate it. I want the office, through a process, to get clarity, because you must remember some of us are not from the word when unity came to understand how certain deals were done when democracy or unity came in within the sport. Currently, that member stand belongs to Western Province Cricket Club.
Yeah.
Right? We don't have access to that particular stand. If there's international games, franchise games, we don't have access. That is Western Province. I don't know. We don't get the clarity. We don't know what the funding mechanism is when international cricket is being played there. But that particular stand we don't have access to.
When you say we, do you mean
all clubs,
Fish Right, Hanover Park?
All clubs don't have access to that particular stand. But the point I'm trying to make here is...
Who is it then for? Who has access only? Who are the ones?
Western Province Cricket Club, not Cricket Association, Cricket Club. A cricket club like ourselves. Now my point is, they're a cricket club like ourselves. They have a venue called Avenue de Mis. If you can't go on the net because there's image disclaimers. But if you go to Avenue de Mis and you go to Downburg Sports Field, it's chalk and cheese in terms of how the facilities look. It is also, to our understanding, that Vineyard Oval belongs to Western Province Cricket Club. The Vineyard Oval is right opposite to the Vineyard Hotel, where sometimes international teams are hosted. So that particular venue will be used for training, which is not far from Newlands Cricket Ground.
Yes, I know.
The point is, what are the funding mechanisms around that? Does Western Province Cricket Club receive funding? Do they charge Western Province for the usage of these things? So what are the funding mechanisms? We don't know. So when you look at this particular, and this is not just them maybe having an advantage over our club, it's all clubs, all clubs. So for me, I feel if there is a deal in place and if there is a fund, that decision must be re-looked at, because for me, that deal was done in bad faith 30 years ago. It needs to be re-looked at. And maybe Western Province Cricket Club, for 30 years of benefiting, maybe it's time for goodwill. Maybe it's time for them to say, look, there are lots of other clubs struggling. Let's level some of the playing fields. So that's one thing I wanted to bring. The other thing, Mr. Chair, that I wanted to bring to your attention, seeing that I am pressed for time. When the debacle of Gerald Majola and the bonus scandal came, there was no MOI in place. So the jockeying of positions, it's still like that for non-independents, but the jockeying of positions was always heated. You would get phone calls, hey, will you back me? And you know, I wasn't one for that type of. I was one for, if you're there to serve, then I'm going to back you. But if you're asking me to back you, but you know, you've got different sets of agendas, then I'm not going to back you. But we did that, and so the MOI, and I know some of the co-authors of that MOI, it took them 2 years to formulate that MOI. We now get to understand that that MOI was not fully implemented as per the Nicholson report. We know that now. But at the time, we didn't know that. But what happened? They took 2 years and sat on that at CSA level. Then they bring it to council meeting. Mr. Chair, 46-page document, maybe thicker. They give you 1 week to read. In 2 weeks, you must give your opinion. And I asked for, why such an important document? Why don't you have workshops with us? It falls on deaf ears. It's as if they don't want to empower you. I am a type of person, if I'm going to get involved in something, I want to understand that. They don't empower you. They push through the MOU. Now, council meetings is done via resolutions and minutes. So what they do is they push it through. And I'm going to talk around how they push it through. Then we talk about, at Western Province, it's our understanding that all assets belongs to amateur sport, amateur cricket. Well, in cricket, all assets belong to the amateur code, to the amateur section. Over time, we were sold, so the next thing comes up, a building project. They've been working this for 10 years. Now, before my time as well, the leadership before my time, they sold off land, which in hindsight, they feel they shouldn't have, because the value is not so great. But anyway, they needed money at the time. They sold off land. Then they come up with this development plan, a development project. But it fomented 10 years already. And then after a period of time, a certain developer, white couple, was running with this for Western Province. And it was like the 11th hour, if you run certain things through the local government, if you don't meet certain then you stand to lose the application process. And I think there was a 30 million tag on Western Province to pursue or lose the application and still pay 30 million. Long story short, we queried and whatever because we were rushed. Anyway, pushed through. So no proper engagement. Now the development is, we were sold 100% plan of a development for clubs. And if it's not 10 years, if it's not for us, 20 years down, our clubs will be getting this returns on this development. Today, Mr. Chair, 51% of that development was sold off to Sanlam. They ran into financial problems. And who comes in as a shareholder? Cricket South Africa. And they take 12%. So from 100%, we are now being to 49% to 37%. The latest is they needed more funding. Cricket South Africa will give another 18 million for another 11%. So another 11%. So sold the dream 100%. Now the point I'm trying to make, Mr. Chair, is twofold. There was a lot of directors, independent directors. Over this period of time, up to 9 directors stood down, all red flags, and some was related to that building project. We know certain people were not in favor of that. The end of this, the matter of our concern was that Cricket South Africa, for me and for us as a club, we feel that is conflict of interest. You now have Western Province as a shareholder in a building project. That Western Province is an affiliate to Cricket South Africa. And this matter of what Ms. Rabia spoke about, our issue and the delay in financials, they use Western Province as a covering. No, Western Province knows this. Western Province. That's why when we wrote to Cricket South Africa, we received no responses. So there's conflict of interest. So Cricket South Africa is not managing this process properly. So that to me is a grey area. It's a conflict of interest, and it's something that needs to be looked into. Nick Cock was the president at the AGM on the 3rd of August 2020. Nick Cock was the president. He specifically stood down as president, citing reasons that he was not going to put the clubs at risk. Red flag. But he stood down. It was maneuvered in a way, others comes in. We have enough mails to prove that we have asked. We don't get the clarity. Lo and behold, some of those decisions wasn't passed through council. They made that decisions. They will tell you, yeah, the Company Act allows him to do that. Technically, yes. But morally and ethically, is it right? If you know that transformation in the Western Cape is not happening as it should, we are embroiled in building projects. We know the importance of how good Newlands must look. And the project is going on. I don't know under what strain. There's lease agreements. In fact, Mr. Chair, I want to tell you, one of the chairpersons is fairly new, so he doesn't know the history, but he's a quantity surveyor. And I don't want to put him at risk, but I'm not going to mention his name. But I asked him a simple question. Any development, when it happens, now you need to be 76%, you need to have your lease agreements in. When he looked at the stats, they had 22%. That showed me that they weren't ready. That's why they ran into. In fact, the financials shows a penalty clause that Western Province paid to the developer of 20 million. 20 million. And we're talking Cricket South Africa paying 38 million into that building fund. Where is that money? Could that not have been used for transformation? Let's talk financials. Financials over the years. For the last 3 years, even 4 years, financials are restated. We sign off financials 1 year, the next year, no, restated. When I raise these questions, I'm the only one, because I'm told I must only speak for myself or for our club. I'm the only one that raises. I'm a lone voice. And amazing, Mr. Chair, sometimes after these meetings, some delegates will come to me, oh, we support you. In fact, there was one delegate 1 year, he said to me, you know, Ashraf, when the enemy is down, you must kick them. I looked at him, I said, these are not my enemies, these are my colleagues. Mr. Chair, for 5 years, I warned them, I'm coming to council meetings, I'm debating it here, open up these matters, let's debate it, let us get an understanding, because we can't be kept dumb and not understand. So the financials is, the last set of financials took them a year. It's now due. The next set of financials is it. Then when I go to council meetings and I object, they try to personalize matters against me. Delegates will stand up. We have 2 board members on the board, and then they would ridicule me. I don't care. I got a thick skin. I got a long nose. I'm standing for, even though clubs don't think that, but I'm standing for all clubs, especially those clubs on the Cape Flats and in the townships. We're giving you enough evidence to show that there is an apathy to really transform the game in the Western Cape. And Mr. Chair, I made comments in my submission, and I hope you allow me. I mentioned about the recommendations, and I don't want to really be rude or anything, but will you allow me to just give some pointers on the recommendations? And I'm not saying it's perfect. It could maybe be a combination of the AfriForums, myself, Ashwell spoke very passionately about getting your hands dirty. I agree with Ashwell. Some of these officials, with all due respect to them, I go to council meetings, then they boast the long hours they sit, and I sit there. I have an 80-year-old president, Mr. Chair. I can tell you that man, from a Friday to a Sunday, is every day with our youth, with our women. And the discrimination, talking about women, Mr. Chair, we have wives, we have mothers, we have daughters, we have sisters, we have nieces. Have you ever witnessed, or would you ever want to witness, females having to get undressed in front of you on an open field? That is discrimination at its worst. What must we tell our females? Yeah, there's a clubhouse, but we don't have proper access to the clubhouse, because the clubhouse is also in a bad state because of politics. It is wrong, Mr. Chair. This is what our females must go through.
Where is that happening?
Sorry?
Where is that happening, where females are expected to undress in front of males?
Mr. Chair, it happens at our grounds, but I can tell you, any of the other clubs, they can concur when you have to go to the fields. There is no decent clubhouses. There is no decent ablution facilities. And we know, I don't want to get into the politics. Certain of these areas is overseen by not the leading government. We know the leading government is criticized, but so too must the government that is being responsible for the areas that we are in. We mustn't gaslight. We can't have two sets of rules. We need to get to this. And this is where I think when it comes to facilities, Cricket South Africa must really come to the fore. 2 years ago, Mr. Chair, the Department of Sport and the Department of Education, at a very high level, national government signed an MOU. Up until today, we don't know what's in that MOU. If I was Cricket South Africa and I know an MOU has been signed, I will make it my duty to go and understand. What we now see, we start seeing local government, which is City of Cape Town, is running programs at schools. Now the schools that we are operating, now we're not operating there because we don't have the budgets. We can't afford to put our coaches there. The schools are desperate. We can't blame them and say, no, you can't because it's our turf. They run football, cricket, but do they know the sport? No one is, if it's local government, then where's the ward councillor? How come he's not? But because he has personal issues, not only with us, with many other organizations, and he only deals with those who he wants to deal with. We sit with the situation where people are now. Then I'm asking, and I've asked Western Province, how come we are not understanding this? How come we weren't called into this? Maybe it's part of, incorporating it into the hub system. No. So there are silos that needs to be sorted out. And the reason why there are silos, people are in position for the wrong reasons. They sit there either for their own agenda or for the club agenda, so that they can have a hub or so that they can have a position. And it's maybe not relevant now because of COVID. Mr. Chair, before COVID, people sing for complimentary tickets. Mr. Chair, the president at one stage gets 50 complimentary tickets. 50. That goes to VIP. When you look at those VIPs attending matches, so there's 5-day matches, there's 1 day, they don't pay a cent. I think up to 2,000 rand, 2,000 complimentaries is issued, if not more. You put a value to that, you see how many millions is made. But those people sit there, enjoy, while we have to be at home. And I say I was a beneficiary. I made a principled decision. I don't want to attend any. I made a principled decision. I would rather, and I have proven it, I pay to go to Newlands based on a principle. But there's people sitting there, VIPs, people that can afford to maybe pay a 200 or 300 rand for a ticket. They get fed. So the conflict of interest is there, the positioning of manipulating to be in a position so that you can get complimentary tickets. That's why you maybe stand up and keep me quiet in a meeting. Complimentary ticket is secured. It's all engineered to keep us where we are. Then, furthermore,
really have to. We are
Mr.
now
Chair,
even way beyond.
Let me end off, Mr. Chair. I want to suggest, it's not the perfect model. Mr. Chair, the minute we became a non-profit and a PBO, we also a public benefit organization. The minute we had to elect office bearers. Mr. Chair, there's around 860 clubs countrywide. Imagine you, if not every club, there are some clubs that are NPOs as well, and PBOs. I know some here in the Western Cape. I don't know countrywide. Imagine you employ 5 people at each club. That's 4,300 jobs you're creating. One will be an administrator, some chair, whatever. 2 coaches, male, 2 female coaches. But you have 3 office bearers that has now got a fiduciary duty. As matters stand, no clubs, if you're not an MPO or PBL, have any fiduciary duty. Some of the delegates that's coming to the club, their members might not even know what their delegate is doing at Western Province. We have a responsibility and a fiduciary duty to come and report back to our members, and that's what we do. Then we have governance, we have MOIs, we have finance, we have coaching. You then structure, empower, have programs where you have, we brought in our accountant who is a patron, and she took us through the financials. One is not going to be doing a few, but we're educating. Although we're cricketers, but we're starting to get to understand. We've got one of our members who is an expert on government bylaws. That is another aspect where Cricket South Africa must step into. Let's understand the bylaws of our areas so that a fellow sports club, a ward councillor or a political party cannot BS us, and we understand the bylaws of how funding must support over and above what funding Cricket South Africa and Western Province or the provinces must give. So there's all these things that you can do, and over time, you're going to see, you're going to grow clubs, and those clubs then must work together off the field, but compete on the field. That's where we must compete. But now we're competing off the field even with each other, fighting, and I say it, we're robust, but we're fair. And whatever we have tabled thus far to yourselves, Western Province, Cricket South Africa, we stand by our principles, our values, and we feel we want those clubs that maybe see us as a threat, don't see us as a threat. We want to work with you. The last thing I want to say, Mr. Chair, I mentioned Langa and Guguletu. Mr. Chair, 4 or 5 years ago, to transform those clubs, a decision was made to put them in the Premier League and the First Division. Langa has been playing in the Premier League for the last 4 or 5 years. No promotion, no relegation. Mr. Chair, Langa Cricket Club, who has now, listen to this is exciting, who has a lady, a woman, as the chairperson. I love that. They must ask if they have seen any differences. You can't just tick boxes. People have mentioned this over this last few weeks. Ticking off boxes, ticking off boxes. So the shenanigans at Cricket South Africa, shenanigans runs through to provincial level and even at club level. And people sit on structures. We have people sitting on structures. We have, in Cape Town, we have local leagues. I'm going to end off now. We have local leagues. We even have a cricket committee now. And then we have the board. And that is how I believe, and I'll fight that cause, and I'll stand my ground. That local leagues, that cricket committee is protecting the board. And the board protects those because that's how they pass their resolutions. And you can fight a losing, you're going to fight a losing cause. And if we don't find an independent way to deal with these matters, no new MOI is going to change it. The system is broken. The structures is wrong. People are taking positions for the wrong reasons. I'm not perfect. I have a lot to learn. My involvement in cricket is spiritual. I've got nothing to gain. I don't want to sit on a board at Western Province. I don't want to sit at a board at Cricket South Africa. I'm happy where I am. I am, because I'm serving our youth. It's about humanity. That's our story, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ali. And I have to thank also our colleague there, Rabia Ahmad. You know, every time a presentation has been made, we go away and mull over a new perspective that we have learned from the presentation. And the presentation, even if it had some bumpy start, has turned out to be one in respect of which we need to apply our minds as we mull over the richness of both of your presentations. There is a lot, in fact, that is in the annexures to your presentations. And I can only promise you that we'll read your presentations together, and my own regret is that we don't say a lot about women cricket. And I would hope that there should be a reflection by Rabia, which is going to focus on her own observations about gender discrimination in cricket. And because that is also an area which we should be probing in the Office of the Transformation Ombuds. But for now, let me thank you. We wouldn't have stayed longer than we should have if there was no substance in what you two presented, and in especially the attention that you, Ashraf, paid to how there is complementarity between your presentation and that of Rabia's presentation. But everything must come to an end, even if it is not a perfect one. And we have reached that point at this time.
I want to take the opportunity on behalf of our club, the youth, the female. I did mention we have a women's team. We have girls' teams as well. So we very harsh on those. But I want to take the opportunity. I want to say, when we made our submission and we wrote to the office, people don't maybe know this, but the fact that you probably received so many submissions, you took the time to respond to us, but the tone of your emails and the tone of how you have presented over the last few weeks, it's really coming from a point of love, care, sincerity. You have written more to us than some of the organizations that we have engaged. I'm not being funny. And I want to say, A sincere thank you from all of us at Hanover Park Cricket Club, our patrons, our sponsor, for taking the time to hear our story. As you said in an email, you want to hear stories. And I know you signed off, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but you signed off as Brady. And that made us so comfortable that an elder doesn't want titles. The chair, I'm a hugger. If I was there physically, I would want to hug you. But because of social distancing, I can't even do that. But one day, maybe I'll have the privilege to meet you personally, sir. Thank you very much. Fisher at Hanover Park Cricket Club.
You're welcome. Well, we are adjourning. Bye-bye to both of you. Okay.